It's that scarcity mindset that if I let go of my niche, I'm not going to be able to maintain the growth and scale that I intend to. And here's the thing, man, we live in this space. Those of us who are successful, we live by a different mindset. It's the law of abundance and the law of reciprocity.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems, like when you get that push-to-talk button stuck. Fortunately, we were on video in the green room today because we've had a few guests that are like, "Hey, dude, stop!" And I'm giving. By the way, folks, I'm giving our guest, Nathan Wheeler, a bucket of you-know-what, because we're not 5 minutes in, so I'm not allowed to cuss yet. It's what
veteran move. There you go, Dan.
But a bucket of you-know-what, because he deserves it, because he's a member of the regiment, and even more importantly, a member of the originals. So, and folks, if you don't know what the hell that is, you need to listen to a lot more of these shows, because I tell you what it is throughout. And if that doesn't give you a clue, then go read Monday Moments. And if you still ain't figured it out, just give me a call. I'll tell you what it is. It's pretty simple. It ain't that hard to figure out. So, I mean, Camden, you got it, right?
Honestly, you lost me on the originals.
Oh man, dude,
I know.
painful, bro. You just broke my
heart. I'm thinking the originals. I'm like, well, Nathan, no, you look a little younger than you do, Dad. So I don't think it's what my definition of originals was. So please enlighten me.
It's the original Special Forces Group, 10th Special Forces Group, right? And they said that they started out with 10th because they wanted Russia to think there were 9 more just like it. And so,
see, I know that. Now I'm more confused because I know that story. So then, regiment, is that just all special forces? Because I thought regiment. I thought regiment was 10th group. I thought you were just doubling down there. All right, see, all right. Well, I know what I learned today.
I use the term regiment as all of our Green Beret brothers.
Okay.
And then when you step into the special category, also known as the best, it's the originals.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah. So, right. I mean, it pisses off 5th group to no end. First, 3rd, and 7th, they really don't give a shit. 5th group gets pissed. Why do you think they run around going Legion and all that stuff? Because they're like, hey, it's not fair. It's not fair that 10th group was first.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
it's a good group of guys over there, but they're going to only be the first. They're going to be one, the originals, right?
That's right. That's right. I mean. It says that on the tagline. I'm sorry.
Right. We didn't make the rules. We just carried the legacy.
That's right. And we ain't letting it go either. There's no doubt about that. So, Nathan, man, good to see you, brother, and have you here. I want to, how the hell did a knuckle dragger, rucksack, under the rucksack, hiding in the team room guy become a wealth manager? Hey, folks, I'm not saying don't trust Nathan, but I am saying let's get some proof before I invest.
Yeah. I was going to say, come on, it's one of those, if he had to work twice as hard at it, that's twice as many reasons to listen to him.
There you go.
It is kind of crazy, man. And I guess just to share a little bit of background about that, obviously, I was active Army for 11 years, wrapped up out here with 10th Group. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my Sky Soldiers, the 173rd Airborne Brigade, some of the best group of warfighters we got, man. Love you guys. But, after getting out, man, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And so initially I just went back down range on a Special Operations Joint Task Force, spent some time playing that game, came back, started training the military for a while in preparation for a near peer conflict. And then I was asked to develop and facilitate the senior leader courses for the Space Force as we set up that new branch. Went to work at one of our combatant commands, writing the campaign order, just outlining to the branches of the military how we're going to execute the national strategy. And then I went to work for Deloitte as a senior consultant in the government public sector. So no part of that, just to your point, no part of that is like, yeah, dude, we're going to go and manage wealth and be one of the, premier financial strategists in the country. And here's how it started. When I was back in the military, I was saving in my thrift savings plan, right? Which for all intents and purposes, a federal 401k, right? And so I was saving up my TSP and I was losing money. Like I had less money than what I put into it. And I was like, hold on a second. If this is supposed to be the vehicle that sustains me for the last third of my life when I intend to not work, I got to be playing a better game. And so, I went and sat down with a financial professional, and I was introduced to strategies for cash accumulation and asset protection that I was entirely unfamiliar with. And the reason I was unfamiliar with it is because less than 8% of high schools in this country offer any type of financial education. So people graduate high school, enter into the workforce, they start making money. They have no idea what to do with that money. And so instead they just go and contribute to an employee sponsored retirement supplement without any idea about how they can access it, when they can access it, what are the tax considerations, what's the transferability look like? Like the conversations surrounding this essential component of healthy financial planning, they're completely lost and forgotten. They just don't happen. So I sat down. Like I said, introduced to strategies I was unfamiliar with. Honestly, sounded too good to be true. Also too good to pass up. So I started saving for me and my kids. Now, fast forward about 6 years, I realized the significance and legitimacy of what I'm doing from a financial planning perspective. So I decided to get licensed. Now, I had no intent to change my career, because I was an enlisted soldier and I was working on a 4-star staff. I was making a lot of good money as a contract. Like I had made it to the peak. Yeah, like I played a good game. So in my brain, I wasn't getting licensed to make a career change. I was just getting licensed really to help friends and family. And so I started doing that. I started helping my friends. I started helping my family, started really getting them squared away with some pretty profound strategies. And as that happened, it was a culmination of events, right? Number one, I just started getting tons of referrals, like doing what I was doing, helping people out. I was making a major impact, and I found a passion in that. Like it made me feel good. You know what I mean? And then past that, I started outpacing my salary, which was pretty significant because I was making 6 figures, which what I thought at the time, I thought that was really good money, especially coming out of the military. I thought that was good money. And then on top of that, I realized that we had entered the greatest transition of wealth in the history of this country. And at the same time, we are losing financial professionals. And those two things are happening because the baby boomer generation is dying and retiring. And so what we see is this influx of people moving into this space. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're limited in scope. Because when we talk about financial services, you've kind of got 3 major lanes: banking, securities, and insurance. And in most cases, people pick a lane and they stay in that lane. And then even past that, they pick a company and they work for that company and they're captive to that organization. And they only have access to that company's products and services. So if there was something out there in the industry that was more appropriate or more conducive to their desired end, in most cases, the financial professional they're working with, they wouldn't even know about outside resources. And even if they did from prior experience, they wouldn't have access to it. And so again, this culmination of things just drew me right in. And so, I dug into the industry. I learned a lot, earned the degrees, earned the licenses, and really set myself in a position. I have direct contracts with the top 192 companies in the industry. So when I sit down with folks, I'm not limited in scope. I'm not limited on the security side. I'm not limited on the insurance and annuity side. We're not limited in any regard. And the goal is to sit down and genuinely provide the most effective strategies, bringing all the components together to make sure that whatever the goals are of the client, whatever your goals are, man, they're getting accomplished. And so, yeah, man, it's kind of nuts. It's Looney Tunes, but it's been a really good go. And again, I found what I'm passionate about. And I know I've been talking for a minute, but I want to say this. I want to wrap up that description with this, man. Leaving out of the military, even working in that government sector, I didn't have the fulfillment that I had in the military. I was very passionate about what I did in the military. And I thought that I was always going to have to just work somewhere to pay for my bills and provide for my family, and that I would never really find fulfillment, happiness, and joy. But I have found that in what I do. And so it's pretty impactful, not only for the people that I serve, but for me personally.
I'd love if you could talk some about because what you hit at the end there, talking about the different types of resources out there and people not knowing all this kind of stuff gets back to, a foundation of education around these kind of subjects. And there's a few different industries that fall into these kind of buckets of like asymmetrical information, where there is a lack of knowledge that we have. We're out there making all the choices. It's a free market. We're out there making the choice of what we want to invest in, what we want to buy, all that kind of stuff. But then the guy on the other side of the table seems to know just about everything, and we don't. And but it's not necessarily like the other asymmetrical information place you go to is doctor. But the doctor is there to take care of you, 9 times out of 10 at the very least, they are there to take care of you. there's not necessarily that same type of relationship in the financial sector. You know, we have fiduciaries where it's like now they are obligated to help you on that. To be honest, that even makes it feel weirder because why do I have to tell you to be obligated? That seems like the job in the first place. All of that being said, it's a weird market. What are your thoughts on trying to change that and educate that, you know, this side of that market?
Dude, you said a few things that really just hit the nail on the head because like I have a team. I run an organization of about 125 associates across the country. And here's the thing, man. And we're growing. We're always looking for ethically driven professionals to supplement the loss that this industry is experiencing. And you hit the nail on the head there. And I tell them this. If you need somebody to tell you to do what's in the best interest of your client, you don't need to be, this is the wrong industry for you anyway. You don't need to be here. Right. And something about that fiduciary space too, is you have fiduciaries in the security side that are only fiduciary with securities products. And you have fiduciaries on the life and annuity side that are only fiduciaries as it relates to life and annuity products. And on either side, they're supposed to tell you my fiduciary responsibilities extend to these products. So like if you're sitting with somebody who's on the security side and they don't have their life license and they don't have annuity products and things of that nature, again, their fiduciary responsibilities do not extend to those products and services and vice versa. And this is very important to know. And again, hitting the nail on the head with you, if you need somebody, I'm going to repeat it. If you need somebody to tell you to do what's in the best interest of your client, this is the wrong industry for you. Don't be here. Now, diving a little bit deeper to answer that question, when it comes,
can I ask just to explore the analogy a little bit, talking about those because you're throwing out finance words, you're going to lose folks. So we're to use like the doctor analogy there. You're talking basically, I'm going to see a cardiologist for my general health, and he's like, look, I can only really talk over here, but there's some stuff going on. But I'm getting the best cardiology advice, but I'm missing out on the rest of the body. Is that basically the kind of analogy you're talking about?
For sure. That's a good analogy. I might use that actually. It's a good analogy. And so when it comes to the education part, that is essential. Right. And so that's the first thing that I do with anybody that I sit down is, I really help them know and understand a few major components. Number one, like money grows in three ways, right? Wherever your money's at, wherever it's growing, it's going to grow in one of three ways: fixed, variable, or indexed. And in a fixed strategy, you're getting a fixed rate of return, usually between 3 and 5%. These are certificates of deposit, money market accounts, bank accounts. And, they're great because they secure your money's safe and secure. The downside that we can see there is that in most cases, we're not outpacing inflation, right? And so the buying power of your dollars may be depreciating each year, depending on the interest rate you're getting and the inflation rate. Then you have your variable accounts. And here you're just betting on the success or failure of a company. And so it can be great. These are 401ks, IRAs, TSPs, stocks, mutual funds, cryptocurrencies, right? It's variable. It goes up and it goes down. And there are years where you can do extremely well. You can get some pretty significant gains. But the biggest concern there is the down years, right? We lose money. We disrupt the compounding process. And now we have to spend time to rebuild to get back to where we were and then continue to progress. Now, then we have index strategies. Now, in finance, when we're talking about an index at its core, it's just a group of companies like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, Dow Jones. There's dozens of indices out there. There's tons of them. And so the S&P 500, I'll use that as an example because this is like the benchmark for the market. You know what I mean? For the U.S. market. It's the top 500 publicly traded companies in the U.S. And so when we put our money in the S&P 500, the gains or losses that we'd experience, they're based on the average of that 500 companies. And so your money in an index is a lot more stable. But that doesn't mean it's protected. Now, in the S&P 500, you'll actually outperform 96% of money managers. But again, there's still that downside that we can experience. Like the S&P 500 closed out at negative 20% in 2022, right? We just saw a big hit like a week ago, right? It's still variable. With index strategies, the difference is you're backed and guaranteed by an insurance company to never lose money, right? They do that by allowing you to realize the gains based off the performance of an index, but your money's not actually in the index. So you're not going to lose money in the negative years. Here's the thing. You're not going to make money in the negative years either. You're just going to hang tight. And so in these index strategies, you're able to realize the upside potential based on the performance of an index, but you're guaranteed no loss in those negative years. And so those are the three ways that money grows. But then past that, we have to look at the three ways that we're taxed on that growth. Now, this is something that is very, very important. Because right now, we're $36 trillion in debt as a nation. The total debt to GDP ratio is negative 133%. And so let me paint that. I know I'm talking finance words. So let me paint this picture. That just means it's almost equivalent to saying like, hey, if comparing it to you, let's say you are making $7,000 a month, but you're spending $10,000 a month, right? That's kind of what the government is doing right now. And so we're just head down, face forward, straight into debt. It's not really slowing down right now. And so the problem and the consideration that we should take there is the fact that we as the taxpayer will be paying that debt. So when we pay taxes and on what is very important to understand. And so we have your taxable or tax now accounts. And here we save after tax dollars in things like bank accounts and brokerage accounts and CDs and things of that nature. And so we pay taxes up front from our income and then again on the gains. And so we're being taxed twice. The biggest issue is not necessarily that we're being taxed twice, but it's that since we are being taxed on the gains, we don't get the full benefit of compounding, right? Because think about it. If I have $1,000 and I get a 10% return, my gains are $100. If I have to pay 20% taxes on those gains, then instead of moving forward with $1,100, I'm only moving forward with $1,080. Then we have our tax deferred strategies, right? These are 401ks, TSPs, IRAs, traditional retirement supplements. And here, the money that we put in is tax deductible. So if you made $50,000 and you put $5,000 into a 401k, when tax time comes around, your taxable income is only $45,000. And the $5,000 you contributed, it goes in the account and it grows tax deferred, meaning you're not going to pay taxes on the gains as it's growing. Instead, you're going to pay taxes on the gains, your contributions, and any employer contributions when you pull that money out in the future at whatever tax rate the government has in force at that time. And so the biggest question and consideration we should take here is, do we think taxes are going to go up or do we think they're going to go down? Then we have our tax advantage strategies, right? And here, what we do, these are, Roth strategies, cash accumulation insurance policies, municipal bonds. And the way that they work is we fund them with after-tax dollars, very similar to tax now accounts. The difference is we don't pay taxes on the gains or again, when we pull that money out in the future, right? So instead, we just pay taxes upfront from our income when our money's the smallest and at a known tax rate. So same scenario, we make 50 grand, put 5,000 into a tax advantage account. Tax time comes around, our taxable income is $50,000. But the 5,000 goes into an account, grows tax-free, and then when we pull it out in the future, we're not taxed either. Now, I do want to highlight the outlier, and that is Roth strategies. For a Roth strategy, you cannot touch that money for 5 years. If after that 5 years, you are under the age of 59 and a half, you can only access your contributions without a tax penalty. If you wanted to tap into the gains, that money would be taxed as income, and there'd be a 10% tax penalty on top of it. Again, if you are under the age of 59 and a half. And so the reason I like to break that down for folks is because you can mix and match the ways that money grows with the way that we are taxed on that growth. You can have a fixed taxable, a fixed tax deferred, a fixed tax advantage. You can have a variable taxable, tax deferred, tax advantage, and you could have an index taxable, tax deferred, tax advantage. There's 9 ways to play the game, and there's a time and a place for all of them, and they should complement each other. It's just important that we know when to use what so that we can most effectively achieve our goals. And that's
there you go, folks. Boys and girls, hit rewind on your cassette player and go back and listen to that. And if you're like me, you might need to hit the slow button on it. Because,
I was going to say 0.5 speed on YouTube.
Yeah, 0.5 speed so you can take notes. That's freaking awesome. Great education. What I'd love to jump into, shift gears a little bit, is this, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. This is a problem set that is unique, and the problem set that is unique to you, or that you have a unique solution to it, is the fact that you're like your field, your career field, your industry, kind of like lawyers and doctors, in the sense of you're really, really good at this thing that you do, right? But you mentioned something earlier that proves that a bit of the uniqueness is set aside, and that's that you have a team of 125 folks around the country.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how you went from, the knucklehead that said, yes, I can help some friends. Oh, I'm getting more friends. I'm getting people that aren't friends. Now I can't do it all, and having to share the load, if you will.
Yeah, dude. And that was, it's kind of crazy because I don't always stop to think about it. People like us, man, we just go, like, it's all gas. You know what I'm saying? And so like, I didn't always stop to think about it, but in hindsight, when I look about it, I mean, it was just that. It was like, I realized not only I can't do this on my own, like our mission statement is no family left behind. And so if I'm doing that by myself, I'm leaving behind a whole lot of families. You know what I'm saying? And so I realized that we really had to scale. And so we did. We started looking for ethically driven professionals to really supplement not only the loss that this industry is experiencing, but also the need that we see in our communities. I mean, the economy, you don't need to be an economist to know the economy is not doing so hot.
So
And
what did you identify as an indicator that said that decision, I need to make that decision now? Was it working, 18-hour days? Was it truly telling somebody, sorry, I can't help you, click, or what?
dude, to be quite frank, the
That's all we
turning,
do here is frank.
yeah, the pivot, like that culminating event for me was I had been working in the industry and I had seen some people here doing things the wrong damn way, because there's a wrong way and a right way to do the things that we do. Right. And it really, dude, it struck a freaking chord. And that was when I was like, bet I'm going to be the difference. We're going to be the difference. And I knew that I couldn't have that kind of impact the way that I needed to by myself. It wasn't even the hours working. It wasn't even like it. Honestly, it was, I remember it very vividly, and I'm not going to dive into all the details because I don't necessarily want to put somebody on blast out here, but I'm going to tell you what, there were some people doing some things they shouldn't have damn been doing, and they know it. And when I confronted them about it, it was a turning point. And that turning point led to me, making the best professional decision I've ever made by entering into this space, by building a team of, ethically driven professionals who are making huge waves in the industry. Like it was profoundly impactful on so many levels, man. And so even though they may not have been doing the right thing, dude, I can't help but thank them because they changed my life.
That could be an interesting conversation over a beer. Ask them out for a beer and tell them why you're thanking them.
Yeah, for sure.
With that though, I think it gets into an area that I think is really interesting in this industry, specifically talking about wealth management, which is innovation. And like what you're talking about there, the phrase that comes to mind, I don't even know if this might be a phrase already, but it's like you're really talking about like ethical and like moral innovation. It's like there's people doing it the wrong way. I want to build a business doing it the right way. Could you talk some about why, whether from the moral side or the actual innovation, why it gets so siloed in the finance industry? Because I think that's one really interesting thing. If you go out there and you figure out a way to make somebody a little bit more, and I'm just using BS words, so sorry, but it's like you figure out how to get Otis 5% more on his 401k, whatever it is. So now that's your differentiator. So you kind of hold that close to the chest, and it stagnates innovation throughout the industry. Would be my outside perception on it. Could you talk some about that?
I can. So there's a few things that come to mind with that. So first and foremost, like again, in this industry, the reason some things get siloed is because people pick a lane and then they work for a company and they are in that silo, maybe unwittingly, maybe not even, in knowingly entering into the industry. They didn't know that, hey, I'm captive to this organization and I can't look outside of. And so they're taught like, hey, this is the best because that's all they have. And if you don't believe you're the best, you're not going to do it. Like, hey, that's something, to know. Like, if you don't think you're the best, you're not going to be the best. So they get to wherever they are, they drink that Kool-Aid and they're not looking at any other flavors, period. Mm-hmm. And so that has a huge part to do with it, right? Being captive to an organization, and being, when you're not captive, you're usually independent and non-captive. And that's what puts you in a position to have a broad spectrum of what you can access on either side or both sides of the industry, And so outside of that, and it's very interesting you're asking this question right now too, because like we're dealing with some of that. Like there are some extraordinary strategies right now that we're working to implement specifically for real estate investors to avoid capital gains tax. And we've had conversations over the past couple of weeks with these strategies, and people are like, hey, like, should we patent this? Like, should we close hold this? Because nobody else in the industry is doing it right now. Should we not share that? And, me and one of my partners are like, nah, dude, let's train people. Let's educate them. Let's do more so that we can impact a greater amount of people. And so it is that, man. It's that you find that niche. It was funny. I was at an event, not too long ago. And I was sitting at a table with a few folks. And I was introducing myself and somebody introduced their self and somebody on the table was like, oh, it sounds like you guys do the same thing. I was like, yeah, it sounds like we do the exact same thing. And the other person was like, oh, we don't do the exact same thing. My clients have said that I'm the best, da, 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 da. And so it's that scarcity mindset. It's that scarcity mindset that if I let go of my niche, I'm not going to be able to maintain the growth and scale that I intend to. And here's the thing, man, we live in this space. Those of us who are successful, we live by a different mindset. It's the law of abundance and the law of reciprocity. Right. And so with that in mind, it's essential that we share these concepts to help the broad scope of people in this country.
Hey, Nathan, thanks for sharing on all that with the side of innovation, why it gets stuck in those silos. I have one specific version of that question I want to ask, which is I had, and I'm going to be very careful with my words here because I know how you finance folks are with regulations and whatnot. I talked to a guy at a bar once. I think that makes him safe. But we were talking about how I think it was Apple or somebody that was dropping out that their savings accounts were going up to like 12% interest in their savings account, something like that. And I remember talking with him going like, wow, that's really cool. Because in theory, competition, somebody goes out there, makes this really great savings account now all of a sudden, all these other banks are going to go and match that. And, I checked my USAA the other day. I think I'm still at that 2.5% in my savings or whatever it is. Now, talking specifically those kind of innovations, you covered why people get siloed. What prevents those changes from jumping between silos or from between businesses there?
Well, a couple things. First, and I know we had like some technical difficulties there for a second, you know what I mean? But it's cool because we don't panic, we pivot. And so I appreciate the pivot.
Yes, sir.
But, when it comes to, and I think if I understand you correctly, like, hey, like if some company's doing this, why isn't everybody doing that? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, basically. If somebody's got the new shiny thing, everyone should get the new shiny thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, any new shiny thing, there are different considerations. There are second, third, fourth, fifth order effects that come from that. And so not everybody's in a position to do the same thing, right? Every company is a company that has its own way of doing things. They have their own left and right limits. There's lots to consider there. So I know that may not be your favorite answer, but it's just that simple. Like one thing that works for one company may not work for another.
I mean, it's not the perfect answer, but it's about as good as it gets besides you pointing to a guy and being, that's Otis. He stopped it. So, okay, we're good there.
Well, in that same line, and the three silos of the investment, the insurance, and there was a third one, the
banking.
Banking. Thank you. Banking. How do you work with your team to prevent the silos, to where, Johnny loves the banking and stays in the banking, and Sally loves the insurance and she's always doing the insurance. So how are you balancing your team out in that sense?
I love that, man. And so, yeah, what we've done is we've brought together a conglomerate of professionals. We have on our team securities advisors, insurance professionals. We have CPAs, tax attorneys, estate attorneys. We've really brought the whole thing together, and we train to know and understand. You know what I mean? Like, hey, like what's best? As a matter of fact, like I said earlier, we got direct contracts with about 192 of the top companies in the industry. They're all A-rated or higher, or we don't do business with them. So every Friday, I have a new one come on to help train the team and help us know and understand how we can leverage them and their resources to serve our communities. We have training almost every single day. We stay hot on it. Like we are very engaged in making sure that we can do its best and that we're knowledgeable and can do that. And again, let's say we're sitting down with somebody on the team who's not securities licensed. Not a big deal. We're going to pull in one of our securities professionals to help make sure if, one of those solutions is more efficient, that they're able to access that resource by working with our team and organization. Same with, CPAs, because sometimes somebody, and I don't want to dive down that rabbit hole, but I'll tell you what, I talk to people all the time who don't have their businesses structured properly. They're not leveraging the Internal Revenue Code most effectively. And side note, the Internal Revenue Code was written for business owners, entrepreneurs, and employers. So if you don't fall into that category, you're not maximizing tax advantages. Kind of that simple. And so especially now in the age of technology, there's a lot of ways where you can fall into one of those categories without increasing your workload by too much. And to know how to strategize most effectively in those categories, you got to work with a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. It's a lot, man. And so that's what we do. We train, we cross train, we educate, we learn, and we understand the language of the business so that we can speak it effectively.
Talking about building out the team and getting folks in the right spot brings to mind another question. Talking about like the morality and ethics in the business. We joke about there's a video of me talking about this dad that goes out every month or so. If it's like you got to get scared when you go to the business. They're like, we're a family. It's like, why are you telling me we're a family? I should feel like family. It shouldn't be that type of a thing. You were saying the same kind of answer when it comes to the fiduciaries. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you how to do your job morally. You should do your job morally. Now, that all being said, that's all great. At the same time, though, if you lead with that mindset of, oh, well, you should just be moral, and you are not helping people and checking and all those kind of things, then you can have a bad apple inside of that group because you're just being trusting, you're being hands off, that kind of thing there. Same thing with the family. If you go, oh, we're all family here, and then somebody's stealing, and you go, oh, well, they wouldn't do that. We're family. Come on, we talked about this. Then you're falling into that same kind of mindset there. Yeah. Could you talk about how to not necessarily like legislating that out of the like, no, we are family, no, we are trustworthy, because that walks down a weird path. But at the same time, you do got to check those things. You do got to build that culture. Could you talk about walking that balance?
Yeah, dude. So there's a few things that we do to maintain that culture. And one of the main things, like we have our vision, our mission, and our values, right? And we talk about them pretty regularly, and we make sure that everybody's in alignment with those things. And so not only that repetition and again, just speaking it all the time, it really helps. Now, past that though, and I think what's very important is we have an operations team. So when business is submitted, like it goes through different channels. It's not just like, hey, somebody's out here doing their own thing. We have an ops team here in our organization. There's suitability requirements. Like it goes through a funnel of people to ensure that what we're doing is best for the client, right? We have to meet certain requirements. And so, there's different things that we have in place to make sure that that's there. But most effectively, I'd say it is the culture. And when we see people, when we find people who aren't, which I have not yet here on my team, thank heavens, but when we find people who are not maintaining our standards, our vision, our mission, our value, then we don't work with them anymore. It's that simple. You know what I mean? And that's what we've done, just setting clear-cut standards. And not unfortunately, very fortunately, we have not run into the case where I've had to address that and really like head on, be like, hey, guy, you're not cut out for who we are and what we do. Bye. But that would be the conversation.
Do you think that's a factor or a result of the culture being strong or your selection process being strong? Obviously, there's both, but if you had to point to one.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question, because I think it is the culture. But our selection too, like when we're going through that process, we discuss, again, our vision, mission, values. We make sure that people are kind of tracking in alignment with that. But just like you said, you can't. Humans are humans. Humans are going to do human things. You know what I mean? And another thing that I've learned in this space is, everybody who entered into financial services didn't come from a background in financial services, period. When you started in this space, you didn't have a background in this space. And so we do bring people on from a variety of backgrounds. Like I said, doctors, lawyers, we've got, Chief Warrant Officer 4, we've got colonels, we've got, your military, like whatever it is, we've got people from all walks of life. We've got directors from Target. We've got people who used to work at Chipotle. Like it's kind of nuts. And at the end of the day, when we bring people on, just to touch the selection process a little bit, when we bring people on, it's not so much based on their background and where they came from. Again, it's about whether or not they're in alignment with our vision, mission, and values. And so that, again, just I guess the long way of answering your question, I think a lot of it is more so culture.
Would you mind sharing some of that? Because, I did a master class yesterday just on that subject, recruiting and hiring talent. And, the unknown factor or the difficult thing to measure is, what is that individual's values? Do they buy into the mission? Because if you ask them and, they want a job, what are they going to say? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Nathan. Yep. That's 100% me. Of course they're going to say that shit.
Yeah.
So how could you share some of your technique?
Yeah. So like anytime we have new associates on board, every Monday I hold a new associate orientation, me personally. And I get to know everybody. There's an introductory, I get to know everybody. I talk to them. I get to connect with them. And then I dive into our orientation. And so it's that connection up front that we can really identify. But then past that, we have a new associate fast start. And so during that call, we dive deeper to understand their why, to understand what motivates them, to really to really get to know them so that we can make sure that we are in alignment with our culture. We understand their two most primary basic needs, like there are six, but everybody has two that stand out. And so we dive into what those are and we identify how that aligns with our mission. And that, like this vetting process, it's worked very, very well. Now, even past that, just to peel that back a little bit further, we have our training programs and processes that really weed people out. Like it identifies the people who are meant to be here and the people who are not. So we have this, like, I guess, layered system of integration that we found keeps the right people.
Yeah, because the guys that I've known that have walked that path to pass all those tests and get all those SEC type certifications, yeah, you got to be committed. There's no doubt about that, because those, from what I've been told, those ain't easy.
Yeah.
There's one piece I want to kind of track back to, which was you talked about the greatest transfer of wealth. And this is something I think I've like half-assed referenced on the show before, Dad. And I read an article on it once. I'll put it that way, Nathan. I would love if you could talk more about what that actually means, and maybe what it means for all of us out there who ain't getting that check in the mail for that $1 billion from great grandma who was in the maple syrup industry back in the day or whatever it was.
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, and man, please don't quote these numbers, but it was something like 78 million people born in a span of a decade, right? And like that baby boomer generation, right? And so when they were babies, Gerber blew up. When they were, adolescents, Toys R Us blew up. When they started buying cars, Ford and them blew up. When they started buying real estate blew up. And now here we're at the culmination of their life and they're transferring that wealth. And so that's what caused the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of this country. And here's the thing, dude. And I wish I had my statistics right in front of me, because I don't like to quote things and not be accurate. But I'm going to tell you what. The amount of people who don't have wills, who don't have trusts, who don't have components that will preserve their assets, the amount of people who don't have those things in place, it's absolutely staggering. Like, because when we don't have some of those components in place, like a trust, for example, our assets will enter into probate, and now they're subject to taxes and legal fees. And so it's going to hit them pretty hard. And we're seeing it time and time again, especially now as wealth is transferring. And so the biggest things that I think are relevant to consider is like, hey, are our assets subject to taxes and legal fees? Like, is everything that I've worked my entire life to build, is that going where I want to who I want without question? Or are we going to have the government come and step in and say, hey, no, here's who gets this, here's who gets that, right? And really the only way to bypass that probate process is to have a trust. And so there's a lot of things that I'm seeing now, and there's a lot of creative strategies that we can implement to help mitigate tax exposure, to make sure that we're effectively doing what we want and that our wishes are being met. But I will say this too. There's not a one size fits all when it comes to finance. Like it's almost like a fingerprint. Everybody's situation is uniquely different. Everybody's been doing what they've been doing. They have the different components in place. There's different things that are happening that make up their financial portfolio and their assets. And here's the thing, when I'm working with anybody, I never seek to replace anybody who they're working with. Right. I've sat down with people's advisors and their CPAs and their lawyers to make sure that we're working collectively for that client, because that's all that freaking matters. And so when we start working with somebody, our intent is never to come in and, replace anything that's working. We're going to take a look at the big picture. Anything that's working, that's going to stay in place. Anything that's not working, we're going to get it replaced with something that is. And anything that they don't have that they should, we're going to help them understand what that is and why. And that's the approach that everybody should be taking when it comes to, not just their finance, but I guess any component where they're looking to make some movement in.
Yeah. I'd be curious, just real quick on that. And I know this is getting outside of your wheelhouse, but just as we're talking about it, what are your thoughts, or have you heard anything about what the kind of broader economic impacts are of that transfer?
Yeah, man.
Like you talked about the Toys R Us going, like, are Toys R Us coming back because the money's going to that, that age group right now, or anything like that you might have heard. Just curious. Man,
here's some things, and I haven't looked up all these numbers in a little bit. I've been very busy scaling. It's been awesome. I've been creating systems and processes to it's been good. It's been good. But the last I checked, it was something like $130 trillion or something like that. That's expected to change hands over the next decade or so. And so here's the implications where my brain goes, right? Are you trying to give that to the government to eliminate their debt, or are you trying to give it to your family because you worked so hard to attain that? And so the biggest consideration I'd say there, because rest assured, and man, government, don't find me and hit me in the face for this one. Rest assured, the government's
looks coming, dude.
Right, dude. Right. Rest assured, the government's going to be looking for any and every opportunity to take as much as they can. Rest assured. So you've got to make sure that you've protected it in some way, shape, or form. Period. Whether that's through a trust, or if you're younger and you're planning for your family's future and you want to mitigate your tax exposure, then like there's different ways to do that. There's a lot of things that can happen. And I don't know why I feel inclined to share this right now, because a lot of people don't freaking know it. But the number one provision in the Internal Revenue Code for beating taxes is a life insurance product. Money in an insurance policy grows tax-free. It's access tax-free, and it can be passed to a loved one tax-free without delay from probate. Right. So there's a lot of things that people don't know, they're not aware of. And it's like people aren't standing on the freaking mountaintops to shout it out. I know we are, but it's not happening on a broad scale. And that's why this education component is so important. So as not only this transfer or this transition of wealth occurs, but as consecutive transitions of wealth, right? Just because we're entering the largest now based on the people who are, born in that time period, that doesn't mean we're going to forget all the people like me. I turn 37 tomorrow. I'm going to make sure that my family gets everything that I build in my life. I'm going to make sure that they have it and that they don't have to worry about somebody coming else and snatching it in. We're going to make sure it's protected from creditors, from predators, from civil lawsuits, from all these little things that people like experience but don't consider. Because why? Because they're not taught. They aren't taught to consider it. And I don't want to dive into that, because I can dive into why I believe that we are not taught to consider it. But instead of diving down that rabbit hole, I would just encourage everybody to consider it.
Yeah. Well, I think this goes back to, you touched on this right before we had our little technical glitch, the pie and how many pieces of the pie. And really, it's not how many pieces of the pie, but how many pies that we can make, and how many apple trees we can grow to make more pies. And that's when you start to shift into that mindset, then you're truly helping people, as opposed to, well, how do I get more money? How do I grow my business? And it's something, it's a natural human thing. Matter of fact, it's more a male thing, man thing, than it is a human thing. And because men, sorry, a little bit of rabbit here. We're going to go on a turtle run here, Camden.
Okay.
But it's a little bit of in our deepest survival caveman sense, we are in competition as men for status. And how do I get more? How do I get another backstrap? How do I get another quarter of an elk? All these sort of things. That's the caveman. And it comes out, and this is the beauty of it, it comes out in business competition. The powerful men look at not competition, but how can I bring him into my gang? How can I bring him onto my tribe? Because he's damn good. And if we are working together, I'm gonna get a shit ton of backstraps. That's why I hunt with the guys I hunt with, even though we're all broke and old now. We're going to need to bring in some younger backstrap chasers, but it's that sort of sense. And that's what we do. And to break down that's the reason we feel that way, because it's instinct.
Yeah.
But when you look at it and you flip it into, well, I don't need to fight that tribe. I need to bring that tribe in with me.
Yes.
And do that. And I'd love to just get your thoughts on that, Nathan, and how that perspective sits when you're at any number of networking things, and 50% of the people in there are wealth managers.
Yeah, dude, I love that, because here's what I found is, like, when you have people who are great at what they do, it doesn't matter what industry you're in or whatever. If you're great, dude, there's space for collaboration. It does not matter. And in the space of wealth management, I'll tell you, dude, there are people who have their niche, right? Like, just because I work with real estate owners and business and, real estate investors and business owners, that's where we kind of focus. So there may be another person who has another niche market, right? I work with some, like I got people on my team. Obviously we help families and individuals too, but we've got people on our team who focus primarily on single mothers. We've got people, whatever your niche market is. And that's the thing, dude. There's always space for collaboration when you, like you said, when you shift that mind frame from like, oh, that's my competition. Like, nah, dog, that's your partner. That's your teammate. That's your ace. That's who's going to get you into a whole nother world that you didn't even imagine because you were too busy thinking about how you should compete. And so I love that you brought that up because that's something especially heavily. I've been like this year, very focused on strategic partnerships, you know what I mean? And pulling in the right pieces to make sure that not only are we serving a broader community, but that there's mutual benefit amongst us, especially as entrepreneurs. Because, and sorry to dive down this rabbit hole, but when you look around, like entrepreneurship is the American dream. Like I mentioned earlier, the Internal Revenue Code is written for entrepreneurs, business owners, and employers. But so many people are caught in that cycle. Like it's like we who grew up here in America, we've lost sight of that American dream. So instead, we just go sell our time for $1 so we can pay our bills at a fraction of a chance for financial independence one day. Well, let me tell you, the way to financial independence, I know a lot of people who are there ranging from age 25 to age whatever. Like the people who are there, they didn't get there punching a clock. That's not how it happened. That's not the realization of the American dream. You've got to broaden that scope and dive into your true potential and build something worth being a part of so that other people can benefit from what it is you do. Because I'll tell you what, givers gain. And so when you always seek to add value, when you step into any room to add value to the people that you're interacting with, man, that's a powerful thing. And you're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about it a handful of times on the show of the like generational perspective around leadership. Nathan, as we're talking about like that wealth transfer and the scarcity mindset, and then clearly, we got 3 folks on this podcast who are looking to fight that and, trying to move forward that mindset of abundance and, giving, like you're saying. What are your thoughts on how those type of generational perspectives play into that wealth transfer? So to throw out, like I mentioned, I read that one article on it like 2 years ago. One of the things they mentioned was that in general, that their kids give a lot more than they were, raised by the Great Depression parents. So they were very hold it to the chest type of wealth. What do you think might be happening with that or those generational trends?
And I want to make sure I understand the question correctly is, we're talking about this next generation carrying on that ideology of close hold. Is that what you're saying? And maybe the trends that we'll see associated with that?
Or more so a rejection of that ideology, because, generally speaking, we tend to reject the ideologies of our parents. That's, I think, a pretty good rule of thumb there. So what would you expect to see as the rejection of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, hopefully, and look, that's not all the way my lane, but I will share my perspective and what I would
we'll put the big asterisk up on it. just go.
What I would hope for is that we see a broader collaboration. Here's the thing. Success is a team sport, right? And so when we're looking at, and that's not just like me and my team or us 3 on this call or anybody else that we may collaborate with in any regard, like community economic success is a team sport. So hopefully if we get away from that thought process, like, oh, this is all mine, I like that hoarder mentality, hopefully we can see more people, not only investing in each other, whether it's time, energy, or effort, or whatever it is, like not only hopefully do we see more of that, but we see our community at large really supporting each other and our mutual success. And just like Otis said, getting away from that, hey, this is my competition, and more so like, hey, how can we collaborate and be a part of the same tribe to our mutual benefit? That's my hope. Now, what actually happens, brother, we'll see.
We'll see.
Well, and I'll also say that those people who don't believe that, who believe there is only one pie, they self-select. And they may have success, short-term success, but they will not have long-term success.
Right.
And they definitely will not carry on generational success in teaching that. Those folks think to some apocalyptic movie, the hero always has a team and a tribe that he's working with. and the troublemakers are always in it for themselves.
Yep.
You know, there's another great example that you can follow. Because, damn man, just plant some more goddamn apple trees. That's all I gotta say.
That's it.
You know, and which, you know, I've never planted an apple tree. I helped plant a peach tree one time.
Whoa, crab apple tree on windbrill. No, that wasn't you?
No, we just had it. It was there.
Okay, all right. My sister's laughing at that reference. No one else is laughing there, but we got one person laughing their ass off on that.
Yeah, that's it. You know, which that would not be something I learned, but you know, I love your synopsis of who we're looking for. And I think that is such a great way to look at it. Is ethically moral, ethically driven professionals. I think was the three words. And folks, if you can get your phrases, your what I'm looking for into that, and that's not a soundbite. That's the shit. I think that's a great thing as a reminder for me. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
First, I got to do the easy one, of course, who the originals are, because as soon as Nathan started sharing the story, I was like, "Oh, I've heard this before," so I gotta make sure I get that right.
You wearing a damn green shirt.
I know. I spent so much time.
Right.
I spent so much time practicing y'all's acronyms, making sure I'm ready for the show. That's my show prep. I just go through all the acronyms you use, make sure I'm ready. And the originals, it'll go on that list, so I'll be ready next time. But no, and all this talk about, growing the pie. We had that great episode talking about managers who, growing the slice of the pie versus actually growing the pie, making more pies, as you put it. Also, I'll throw this out there as an entrepreneur. Make some damn cake too. There's always other options. Shoot, hey, get some healthy options out there. There's lots of different ways to grow that pie, and it's not always literally the pie. So get creative with it, because that's the real secret to innovation, is not letting yourself get locked into that area there.
Yeah, well, you just got me thinking. When was the last time I made a meat pie? So there you go. And I'm going to go kill a cow. Maybe take some of that elk meat I got in the fridge and make some meat pie. I'll talk to Miss Suzanne about that. Nathan, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I'll tell you what, man, and it's not something I didn't know, but it's something that I think always needs to be reiterated, and it's exactly what you said, man. Like, you don't need to be in competition, man. These people should be part of your tribe. So instead of looking at people like, hey, this is a competitor, look at them like, hey, this is a collaborator. And man, I think if more people did that, we'd be better off. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Nathan, how do folks find you, learn what you got going on, and, get educated?
Yeah, no. And so I appreciate you asking. So I have a website. It's nathanyuwheeler.com. And then even on all of those social media platforms, please feel free to follow and engage. I love to engage on those platforms, and my little handle or whatever we're calling it, on all of them is Nathan U. Wheeler. And so you can find me there. My email address is wealth@nathanyuwheeler.com. I try to be consistent. Just Nathan U. Wheeler, right? It's just my name, first name, middle initial, last name. If you're looking for that, you're going to find me. And I would absolutely love to connect in any regard, because again, we aren't in competition. We should be in collaboration.
Awesome, man. Nathan, thanks for your time today, man. It's a pleasure catching up with you.
Yeah, likewise, brother. I appreciate you.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Camden Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Nathan Wheeler, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass it along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, that full archive of episodes is available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.